All right, so this is going to be a quick introduction to the automated version of the C3 doc. I'm not going to talk too much about how everything's working. I'm just going to make a quick demo as a introduction to this. Um, just a disclaimer, this is all a test environment for myself. None of this is actually interacting with our current live C3 or DTS C3 checklist. All of this is my own version of everything. Okay, so the whole process basically begins for the 6 p.m. slash 7 p.m. person when they're getting ready to create the doc for the next day. So the first step is, let's say we finished status 3. And now before we move on to the next step, which is loading in the next day's assets, we have to save the current sheet. So today we performed the checks on all of this stuff. We did the syndications on it. And we finished status 3 reports. So now what we have to do is archive all of this. So we just click this one button. We get a prompt. Are you ready to archive? It lets you know that you should only do this one time after status 3 before creating the next day C3 doc. So let's assume we're at that point. It's 7 p.m. We're done with status 3. And I'm just going to click yes. Get a little status update up here. It says creating the archiving the assets. Just stand by. And when the job is done, it'll let you know, hey, the job's done. And you can continue on and change the air date for the next day's assets. You just click OK. Now we have a tab over here, logs. It'll let you know what's going on. When it finished the process, it took about like 5 seconds for all of this to happen. Again, I'm going to try to keep it simple and not explain everything that just happened. Just know that all this information is now saved in a different location, which is right here. All right. Now we're ready to update the air date. Now, all of this information up here is just read only, as it says up here in the column C. To update the new assets, we have to go to the DTS C3 checklists, as we always do, even now. And we're just going to update the air date in here. And once all of this information updates, it'll automatically update into our version. So you'll notice the air date changed and the assets themselves changed on their own. We could go ahead and clear out the syndications ourselves manually. I had a script that does that, but it was making it a bit too complicated. Just in case it was, we have a mistake in archiving, you want to keep this stuff here. We can manually erase the syndication times. So, anyways, now the only thing the person has to do is click the build VOD doc, and it'll automatically create the checks, C3 checks doc for us. But before you do that, you want to keep an eye out for assets such as this right here, where let's say they're preempted or they're just filler rows. Obviously, you don't want the script to create a whole 12 rows in the C3 checks for that. I put in a way to ignore that. You just take the network column and make the background red. And now it'll create all of this. It'll say, okay, these two networks are red, so I'm going to ignore this entire row. And I'm going to skip over to Telemundo Oxygen and all of the rest. So I made the network color red on the ones I want to ignore. And I'm going to click the button, Build VOD Doc. Self-explanatory, same thing I just said. Take the network column, make the background red for the rows you want to ignore. We did that already, so we're going to click yes, move on. Gives a little status update, building C3 doc, standby. And now you're just going to let it do its thing, basically. It'll put the filters in itself, copy over the assets itself, fill in the brand 6s for us as well. Just takes a second or two because it's copy pasting, and boom, C3 doc is ready. So this cell D1 it keeps us updated with the status. If we wanted to get into the details, we could always go back into the log, and you could see it started building the C3 doc at 15:23:09 seconds, and the C3 doc it was ready in 37. So it took little over what, like 29 seconds to do all of that. And you can see our doc is ready to perform our checks. All the filters are in, brand sixes are in, yada yada yada. And now let's say the morning people come in, they do their checks, they're ready for status 1, and obviously for Tableau we have to build a syndication notes tab. Don't worry about it already being filled out from yesterday's syndications. It's gonna overwrite all of that information. So now we fill in. I'm gonna erase these because these are from the previous one. All right, so now we just we got to make sure the syndication times are filled in. Again, we're gonna have a prompt that reminds us of that. We put in whatever we want in the cells, and it'll basically go through each one of these. Let me show it as it happens. So I'm gonna click this build syndication doc. It's just giving us a prompt to let us know that update the syndication times before you do this. If we forgot to update it, we just click no, it'll terminate it. But let's say we already updated syndication times, click yes. Again, giving a status update. Erase the old information, paste the new one. And now what it's doing is going through each cell. And if it's a timestamp, it's gonna leave it alone. And if it's anything else other than an empty cell, it's going to give it a drop-down menu, and we can pick whatever the status is out of the drop-down menu under investigation if we don't know what it is, or pick one of these options. And the background is yellow for those. And if it's an empty cell, or if we put NA in there already, it'll fill it in with another NA of this format and with the background gray. And let's say in the future we have an updated list of drop downs that we want to add into the cell. We just go under lists, and we could take this processing list and just add on to it. It'll automatically update it. And that's about it. It's all just a click of a few buttons. If over here you could take a look at syndication notes. It took like less than 20 seconds to do. Well, exactly 20 seconds to do. And yeah, all that information, everything just happens with these 3 buttons right here. This is the current view. I can always change this view and make a custom menu option up here for us. And it'll just be like, just like these drop downs have these options, I can have a drop down that has these 3 options if this view is not something that we want. I just think a click of buttons is a little bit better. The buttons themselves have this text on it, so it's a little more self-explanatory that way. All these that are marked red on the bottom, we don't mess with. That means these are just view only. We don't need to touch any of this stuff. And the only thing we mess with are these 2 on the bottom. Again, the first one, builder, we're only using to update the timestamps, and the second one, C3 checks, because we're going to actually perform the checks and archive them. And that's about it for the video. Let me know what you think.